Welcome to our community church, Unitarian Universalist. I'm your worship associate, Emma, and it is a joy to be with you, both in person and virtually today. So, who are we as community church? We are a progressive, open-minded, and inclusive religious community. We welcome all who are on a spiritual search for truth and meaning. Ours is a faith in action as we do the work of social justice and elevate compassion in our quest to live ethically, recognizing the inherent worth and dignity of every being. Please look to your weekly email for announcements. This morning we welcome Dr. Laura Miller to the pulpit. She is our current board president, and she's back in our pulpit today. Laura has worked as an activist, engaging in numerous progressive political activities over the years. She's been interested in revolutionizing our current economic system since being exposed to certain ideas in 1970. Now I'll do our land acknowledgement. We acknowledge and pay tribute to the original inhabitants of this land. The city of New Orleans is a continuation of an indigenous trade hub on the Mississippi River, known for thousands of years as Bobancha. We recognize that as a result of broken treaties and involuntary removals, Native Americans were often forced from their lands. We remember and pay respect to the communities impacted by these actions. Native peoples have lived on this land since time immemorial, and the resilient voices of Native Americans remain an inseparable part of our local culture. With gratitude and honor, we acknowledge the indigenous nations that have lived and continue to thrive here. It is Community Church's custom to light a chalice invoking hope and eternal truth to our worship. Please join in singing "We Light This Flame" with the words that are printed in your order of service.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Happy Memorial Day. In honor of that, there are two things. One, I want to introduce you to my father, Master Sergeant Daniel M. Ramirez. And he was a musician in the Army, and he taught all brass instruments, and he played the euphonium. So this story, I was looking for, we're going to be talking about music and how music represents almost everything, memories, anything, important things in the world. And, and we're going to be talking about music with the kids today. Well, I thought I heard someone, but maybe not. So this is called Broken Taps, and it's about Sergeant Kenneth Clark. Army Sergeant Kenneth Clark wasn't a stereotypical military man. He never rushed the enemy under a hail of gunfire, and with his black horn-rimmed glasses, he looked more professor than soldier. But as the principal bugler for the U.S. Army Band, Clark served his country in a different but still critical way. He played taps at President John F. Kennedy's funeral. He had blown the haunting 24-note military flawlessly thousands of times before. But on this day, After waiting for hours in the cold and under unprecedented pressure, Clark uncharacteristically missed the sixth note. It should have been a disaster. But to a grieving nation, the broken sound came across as a wail, a sob, as if the bugler and his trumpet were also crying for their fallen leader. Clark's broken rendition of Taps became one of the most iconic moments of the four-day memorial. At the Military Heritage Museum, Clark's story is shown with a video and a display of his uniform in tribute to the all-too-human soldier musician who inadvertently provided the sound to match his country's sorrow. I thought that was a great story. There's no children here, but let's just sing them out anyway, wherever they are.
Go down, please, go down, please, may the Spirit of us all everywhere you may.
Good morning. My first reading today is by Wallace B. Donham, a 20th century dean of Harvard Graduate School of Business Administration. If we have not the brains, ability, and the cooperative spirit necessary to cure such conditions as those in which we now find ourselves, then our mass production, our scientific progress, our control over nature may actually destroy civilization. And that is what is going to happen. Machines are created, making it possible to manufacture more in an hour than used to be manufactured in a month. More is produced by the labor of one man than was formerly produced by the labor of 1,000 men. Fertilizers are available, whereby an acre of land can be made to produce from 2 to 3 or even 4 times what it formerly produced. Various other inventions and scientific achievements make their appearance. But instead of bringing prosperity, ease, and comfort, they have meant unemployment. They have meant starvation. They have meant pestilence, whereas they should have meant that hours of labor were shortened, that toil was decreased, that more people would be able to consume, that they would have time for pleasure, time for recreation. In fact, everything that could have been done by science and invention and wealth and progress in this country should have been shared among the people. We will now sing hymn number 18, What Wondrous Love Is This?
Now is our sacred time of joys and sorrows. If you are online, please write your joys and sorrows in the comments section to be read aloud. If you are in person, there are cards for joys and sorrows in our foyer, which Marilyn will pass out if you were not able to fill one out earlier. So please fill out your cards during our musical interlude if you have not already. And our hymn will be number 85, although this life is but a wraith. A sorrow from Jada, my associate scarecrow overdosed. So sorry, Jada. A joy from Heidi. This Wednesday is a free day at Longview House and Gardens. From Liz, Rosa Diaz's oldest daughter, Allison, graduated from 8th grade. She will start high school in the fall, thanks to all who have supported this family with love and care. Liz has a card for anyone if anyone would like to sign. So see Liz after the service. And another joy from Liz, we're so happy to see Howard here today. I think that's a joy for many of us. And from Lizzie Colleen, I'm so joyful for this supportive, loving community and that we can join in even when we're all sick. So everyone in the Colleen household feels better soon. Does anyone else have a joy or a sorrow that they would like to share? Yeah.
After a long hiatus, we had a parents' night out on Friday.
Can't hear you, sorry.
Oh,
Online.
After a long hiatus, Community Church hosted a Parents' Night Out on Friday night, which is the GNU families can come and I babysit basically. And so the parents go out and have a good time. And we were so excited. The kids were like, I want to be with you next time. So I was so excited about that. So it was great to see children coming back, you know, to the church. So very excited about that.
Everyone. And we will light 2 more candles, one for the joy still bubbling up, 2 new to share, and one for the sorrows that we cannot yet put into words. Know that we love you and hold you in our hearts.
My second reading is from Franklin Delano Roosevelt. The wider a distribution of wealth, the more we can make it possible for the men and women of the land to have the necessities of life, that they will not have to lie awake at night worrying where the food tomorrow will come from. Then, and only then, will we have the security necessary for the country. So now, an economic model for Unitarian Universalists. The first time I took a sermon class taught by Reverend Darcy, Alan Malone recommended 2 books to me. One of them was Donut Economics by Kate Raworth. Thank you, Alan. I know you're watching, or at least you told me you were going to. Thank you. The book presents what seems to be a whole new way of promoting economic success and well-being. I say seems to be a whole new way because in many respects it reminds me of a philosophy from an earlier time with which I was already quite familiar. I will go into more detail about that in a bit. Essentially, the philosophy is based on the idea that the currently popular accepted mode of economics depends on continual growth. But how can that be? How can unlimited growth succeed on a finite planet with limited resources? I have instinctively, and as a one-time professional environmentalist, seen the folly in the premise of perpetual growth. Surely at some point, enough is enough. Donut economics is based on this understanding. In its simplest terms, Raworth illustrates the ideal economy as being donut-shaped, that round circle with both an inner and outer boundary. The economy itself is illustrated as the part that is, as it were, the actual donut. The limits of the inner and outer circle represent the boundaries beyond which it is unacceptable to tread. The inner boundary is the standard of living limit, beneath which no civilized society would be permitted to fall. In our current system, far too many are in that forbidden space. They are desperate, not knowing if survival is possible, living in constant need and fear of not having enough. They are sacrificed for the greed of others. This inner circle of despair is labeled critical human deprivation by Raworth. The outer boundary, another limit beyond which no civilized society would be permitted to go, represents the limits of our natural world. And again, currently we have pushed beyond what should have restrained us. This pushing is the cause of climate change, among other ills, as our seemingly insatiable demand for extracting and burning fossil fuels goes way past what we know is reasonable and sustainable into the area Raworth labels as critical planetary degradation. To quote Raworth's primary illustration, the outer boundary is the ecological ceiling. The inner boundary is the social foundation. The donut itself is the sweet spot, and I hope you don't mind the wordplay, but yes, the sweet spot where it is a safe and just space for humanity. And the economy itself is regenerative and distributive. It is an economy in service to life and is therefore a better model. Early in the book, Raworth poses this question: what if we started economics not with its long-established theories, but with humanity's long-term goals, and then sought out the economic thinking that would enable us to achieve them? Raworth lays out 7 principles as a foundation for creating a more equitable, just, and sustainable economy and society. Her 7 principles and suggestions for implementation mesh beautifully with, and in some instances even echo, our own UU 7 principles, something that I personally find delightful. But before delving more deeply into Raworth's 7, let me present some history. Her ideas may be considered radical, but they are anything but new. Biblically, we have the year of the Jubilee. Every 50 years, people were released from debts and slaves were freed. Now, some have come along and interpreted Jubilee as only applying to very strict circumstances. Others, however, have interpreted it differently. In addition to biblical guidance, we can also refer to Plato, who said, "The form of law which I propose would be as follows. There should exist among the citizens neither extreme poverty nor excessive wealth, for both are productive of great evils." And Daniel Webster is quoted as saying, "The freest government would not be long acceptable if the tendencies of the law were to create a rapid accumulation of property in a few hands and to render the great mass of the population dependent and penniless." Even Republican presidents agree. Lincoln said, "All things of right belong to those whose labor has produced them. But in all ages of the world, some have labored and others without labor enjoyed a large proportion of the fruits. This is wrong and should not continue. To secure to each laborer the whole product of his labor is a worthy subject of any good government." And Teddy Roosevelt followed by saying, "I feel that we shall ultimately have to consider the adoption of a progressive tax on all fortunes beyond a certain amount, so as to put it out of the power of the owner of one of these enormous fortunes to hand down more than a certain amount to any one individual." Even Herbert Hoover advocated that "My conception of America is a land where men and women may walk in ordered liberty, where they may enjoy the advantages of wealth, not concentrated in the hands of a few, but diffused through the lives of all. The remedy to economic depression is not waste, but the creation and distribution of wealth." Reviewing Raworth's principles, her first one is to change the goal. Instead of working to increase in perpetuity the gross domestic product, GDP, she says that the goal should be meeting the human rights of every person within the means of our life-giving planet, to learn how to thrive in balance. She quotes Donella Meadows, lead author of the 1972 Limits to Growth report. Meadows declared, "Growth is one of the stupidest purposes ever invented by any culture. We should ask, growth of what and why and for whom and who pays the cost and how long can it last? And what's the cost to the planet? And how much is enough? Even Simone Kuznets, the economist who created the concept of GDP, said, distinctions must be kept in mind between quantity and quality of growth, between its costs and return, and between the short and the long-term goals. For more growth should specify more growth of what and for what. Looking to earlier times, in 1819, Swiss economist Jean Sismondi sought a new approach with human welfare, not wealth accumulation, as its goal. John Ruskin in the 1860s declared, there is no wealth but life. The country is the richest, which nourishes the greatest number of noble and happy human beings. I've seen reports about the happiest country, and folks, it ain't the United States. In spite of our so-called envy of the world economy. Her second goal is to see the big picture, not the circular flow diagram found in Economics 101 texts, but rather to look at the economy as existing within society and nature, powered by the sun. Laying out her points as if they were a stage play, she compares the 20th century neoliberal story, in which we go to the brink of collapse, to a 21st century story, in which we create a thriving balance. She casts her play with a set of characters whose motivations differ according to which script is being followed. In the current failing system, this includes the market, which is efficient, so give it free rein, versus the market proposed for the future, which is powerful, so embed it wisely. Business, which is innovative, so let it lead, versus business, which is innovative, so give it purpose. Finance, which is infallible, so trust its ways, versus finance, which is in service, so make it serve society. Trade, which is win-win, so open your borders, versus trade, which is double-edged, so make it fair. The state, which is incompetent, so don't let it meddle, versus the state, which is essential, so make it accountable. She also references other characters not required on stage in the current way of doing things, but which are all included in her ideal listing. The household, which is domestic, so leave it to the women, versus the household, which is core, so value its contribution. A favorite quote of mine from this section is from Alvin Toffler, who asked, how productive would your workforce be if it hadn't been toilet trained? Returning to her cast, the commons, which are tragics, so sell them off, versus the commons, which are creative, so unleash their potential. Society, which is non-existent, so ignore it, versus society, which is foundational, so nurture its connections. The earth, which is inexhaustible, so take all you want, versus the earth, which is life-giving, so respect its boundaries. And finally, power, which is irrelevant, so don't mention it, versus power, which is pervasive, so check its abuse. She concludes that the economy is diverse, So support all of its systems as they are reviewed under her model. Third, she preaches nurture human nature. Humans are social, interdependent, approximating, fluid in values, and finally, utterly dependent on the living world. To quote, "We are deeply embedded in the web of life, recognizing all that it depends on." And doesn't that resonate nicely with our seventh principle? Respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. Fourth, she promotes getting savvy with systems and advocates stopping the search for the economy's elusive control levers and instead begins stewarding the economy as an ever-evolving, complex system. She uses gardening and gardens as her metaphor, rather than previous models based on machinery. Quoting from the book The Gardens of Democracy by Eric Leo and Nick Hanauer, "To be a gardener is not to let nature take its course, it is to tend. Gardeners don't make plants grow, but they do create conditions where plants can thrive, and they do make decisions about what should and shouldn't be in the garden." She also relates what I found to be a fascinating story about the game Monopoly. In younger days, I was an avid player, greedily buying up properties and rejoicing when I was the super rich winner. The original game, however, had two possible sets of rules. One promoted a more cooperative prosperity set of rules, in which every player gained each time anyone acquired a new property. The game was won by all when the player who started with the least money had doubled it. Imagine how that set of rules could have influenced generations of young players. Her fifth principle may be the most controversial. It advocates deliberately designing to distribute. Yes, the straw boogeyman of wealth redistribution. She cites in particular the wealth that lies in controlling land, enterprise, technology, knowledge, and the power to create money. Of note for me is a quote from Finland's Prime Minister, Sanna Marin, in her 2020 New Year's address. She stated, "The strength of a society is measured not by the wealth of its most affluent members, but by how well its most vulnerable citizens are able to cope." Interestingly enough, some surveys list Finland as the world's happiest nation. Food for thought. More equal societies, be they rich or poor, turn out to be healthier and happier. Some other surveys list third world countries as being happiest. Raworth cautions, don't wait for economic growth to reduce inequality, because it won't. Instead, create an economy that is distributive by design. Share the wealth, she proclaims. And if that sounds familiar, excellent. Louisiana's own democratic socialist Huey Long advocated such almost a century ago. You may not know it, but Long was the one who deserves credit for Social Security. Rather like Bernie has been to Biden, Long was the catalyst pushing Franklin Roosevelt to the left. Raworth also suggests community-based renewable energy systems and time banking. Sixth, create to regenerate. Pollution is not an inevitable byproduct of true progress. A redesigned, and better model is a double loop of recycling. She comments that contemporary capitalism is the opposite of generous. It is focused on just one form of value, financial, for just one interest group, shareholders. Regenerative designers ask themselves, how many diverse benefits can we layer into this? While mainstream business still asks itself, how much financial value can we extract from this? Finally, her seventh principle is be agnostic about growth. In other words, growth is not the be-all, end-all, wonderful goal that most economists now strive for. Consider nature, where nothing grows forever. We need economies that make us thrive, whether or not they grow. Ultimately, Raworth's goal can be summed up in her own words as creating a new economic mindset that is never set, but always evolving. Economics is not a matter of discovering laws. It is essentially a question of design. As UUs, we should promote and encourage a design such as this, based on our own principles and grounded in love. Thank you, and blessed be.
Community Church Unitarian Universalist is a self-sustaining congregation. Members and friends' generosity help us to do the sacred work of bringing justice, spirituality, and compassion to our community and beyond. You can give online at ccunola.org/stewardship or by text at 504-370-2659, text GIVE. You can also send us a check at 6690 Fleur-de-Lis Drive, New Orleans, Louisiana 70124, and you can give in person. Each week, we give 50% of our plate to a cause that is chosen by our social justice ministry. This month, we are supporting Rosa Diaz, whose daughter recently graduated 8th grade. She is an immigrant from Honduras who walked here with her children, and we have been supporting her since she came to the New Orleans area a few years ago. So as the ushers come around with baskets, please join in singing our offertory hymn, number 184, Be Ye Lamps Unto Yourselves, hymn number 184. One joy from your daughter, who's happy to, from Liz's daughter, who's happy to be able to share with the community from afar. So, I wanted to have that.
And having just lit that, we're now going to extinguish. But first we'll just extinguish the chalice. We extinguish the chalice here that it might glow gently in our hearts. May it light your path as you leave this place. May it guide your way until we are together again. And now I'll grab the benediction. I'm actually going to be doing two different quotes for the benediction. The first one is from George Orwell, and the second is from Raworth. Either we all live in a decent world, or nobody does. We all have a hand in shaping a new economic future. We remake it by moving our money to ethical banks, by working with each other, by enshrining living purposes in the enterprises that we set up, by exercising our rights to parental leave, by contributing to the knowledge commons, and campaigning with political movements that share our vision. Thank you. And we will now do our final hymn, number 151, I Wish I Knew How.